The next thing which I want to talk about is inter-thread communication. One way is something which we have already seen using the join method. We also have the wait, notify and notify all method. We will also see, what is the meaning of interrupting a particular thread while it is working. We can use interrupt method, and there are other methods like interrupted and interrupted which we can use. So let's go ahead and check all of these out. Now to demonstrate this, I'm actually going to create a new class, and it's going to be called Thread Communication. And in this, we are actually going to work on a real world scenario. Now, let's say, for example, I have a banking application, and in this, I want to make sure that I have multiple threads working. One thread might be wanting to deposit something, another thread might be wanting to withdraw something, etc. But I want to make sure that, every time my balance is consistent. Okay. So the first thing which I have, in my class is a static balance. And for now, let's have static public int balance equal to 0. Now this is the balance which I really want to make sure that, all the threads are working on the same balance, but it should be consistent. Also, I want to make sure that no withdrawal should happen until and unless some deposit has happened and my balance is above that particular threshold of withdrawal. So for example, if I want to withdraw an amount of 1000, then my balance should be greater than 1000. And I also want to make sure that my deposit has happened, before any withdrawals, because, initially the balance is going to be 0, right? So I'm actually going to create, two methods, withdraw and deposit. So I'm going to create a public void withdraw, and this is going to take in the amount which I want to withdraw. In this, what I'll do is I will just check, if my balance is, let's say, less than or equal to 0, or it is less than amount, then I really want to make sure that I wait in this particular thread for any other thread to actually deposit the amount in this particular account. So I would just write over here a sysout, and I would write, waiting for balance update. And then, I would call the wait method. This wait method is actually going to help me waiting for any other thread to work on what we want to happen. So basically what we want is another thread to actually work and update the balance to be greater than 0 or to be greater than the amount for me, right? So I would now surround this with a try catch. And now outside this, I'm actually going to update my balance. So my balance is going to be balance minus amount, because this wait might be getting over and my balance has to be updated, right? And then finally I would write that, amount withdrawn successfully. So this is all about my withdraw method. Let me also actually create a deposit method. So I would have public void deposit, and in that I have my amount which I want to deposit, and in the body of this method I want a simple sysout statement which is going to write depositing amount, and then I'm just going to update my balance. So balance is going to be balance plus amount. So we have these two methods created. Let me now create my main method, wherein I'm actually going to write some code for testing. Let me also format this a bit. Now in this main method, I'm actually going to create two threads. So let me just create an object of this thread communication class in here. So I have thread communication T1, or thread communication obj equal to new thread communication, just to make sure that we know that this is an object. And now what I have is really two new threads. So I would just create new thread, and within this normally we would have two runnable And within this runnable, just the way we have done, I would override my public void run. And in this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, let's call this a bank, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do bank.withdraw, and I'm going to withdraw an amount of 1,000. And this is something which I want to start immediately. And then for the next thread, I'm just going to create this whole thing again. And now in this particular thread, I really want to sleep the thread first. What I'll do is I'll call Thread.Sleep. Let's say, for example, half a second. And then once this sleep is done, then I would want to actually deposit the amount of 1,000. Or let's say I want to deposit amount of 2,000. So I'll surround it with try and catch. So this is something which I'm going to start after this. Now remember, whenever you are actually trying to wait for something in a particular thread, then this wait or any other method like notify and notify all, that has to be inside a synchronized method or a synchronized block. So I'm actually going to make this withdraw to be synchronized. And even when I'm actually wanting to deposit again, I don't want the balance to be worked upon by multiple threads at the same time within the deposit. So I actually want to make the deposit synchronized as well. So now we have both withdraw and synchronized. What will happen is that first it's actually going to try to withdraw, but it would see let's say it would see that the balance is less than 0, or if the balance is less than the amount, then it's actually going to wait. It's going to wait until the amount is deposited and this deposit method is actually completed, and only then it's actually going to work on withdrawing the particular balance. Now when it is actually going to wait until the balance is going to be above that amount of time. So now with this balance.deposit, it's actually going to understand that yes, the balance has gotten above the amount and I can do that. While it is waiting, can it even check whether the balance is greater than amount? No, it's waiting, and we actually have to notify this particular synchronized method to make sure that okay, you were waiting, now I'm notifying you, now go ahead and check again and try to actually do your entire processing after you have done waiting. So we really do not want it to keep waiting for us. We want it to actually be notified again. Now how do we notify? Once we have deposited our amount over here, we could actually notify the thread which might be waiting for balance updation to actually get notified. So we could call notify or notify all over here, or we could actually do the deposit and then call the notify over here, just to make sure that now the deposit is done. Anybody waiting for this particular deposit, any thread waiting for the balance updation, please get notified and go ahead, stop waiting and go ahead and do your withdrawal or anything which you are doing with this particular amount if you wanted to do. So what I'll do is once I have done my deposit, I'll call the notify all from here. And this notify all is actually going to make sure that all the other threads which are waiting for the balance updation can be notified. And when I actually save this, and now when I actually run this code, now this waits for balance update. It says depositing amount, and then it says amount withdrawn successfully. So this is working exactly the way in which we would want. But for example, we are waiting for balance update and nobody wants to actually, deposit the amount. Will we keep on waiting for like eternity before terminating the program? No, right? So for that, we can actually use another version of the wait method. And here it says that, you can also check specification for another type of wait. And so we do have, this wait long, and that's actually going to add timeout in milliseconds for us. We also have, another versions of wait. So for example, we really want to wait only for, 5 seconds. So when I save this and when I run this, Now it does wait for the amount to be deposited and then it withdraws the amount successfully. But let's say we do not deposit the amount, in that 5 seconds. So before depositing, we actually wait for 6 seconds. When we actually try to run this would wait for balance update, and then it simply says amount withdrawn successfully. It basically waits for 5 seconds and then, it just does without, the amount being there within it. So this is something which is wrong, right? We really do not want to do this particular task just because we waited and, nobody did notify us. So this is something which we would do only if this part is true. So I would just, do a balance is greater than or equal to amount, only then do this updation and write that, we have done this updation. If not, then I do not want this particular thing to happen. This would simply, terminate this particular withdraw without actually withdrawing something. So now if I try to run this, now it says waiting for balance update, and then we keep waiting, but then, nothing happens. And now it says depositing amount, but then we do not have amount withdrawn successfully just because we kept waiting and nobody deposited amount in this amount of time. So this is fine for me, just in case, the amount withdrawal is unsuccessful, the user is going to actually retry amount withdrawal. That's absolutely fine. So instead of, adding the 6 second delay, I would just, add a 2 second delay. And now if we try to run this, we wait for balance update and then, we deposit the amount and then we are able to easily withdraw the amount. So now this is how thread communication works. We wait for some other thread, the other thread completes the particular task and notifies all the other threads. Another method in which we can actually notify is not by using NotifyAll, but just by using the notify method. So instead of NotifyAll, I could just write notify, and this would work, exactly the same way as we would expect with NotifyAll. Now, this notify is not actually going to notify all the remaining threads, which are waiting. It is only going to notify the first thread, which is waiting. So the thread which is actually waiting for the longest time, or the thread which has the highest priority, it's going to notify that particular thread. And then, that thread has the responsibility of notifying any other thread. So it's just like, people standing in a queue and everybody is waiting. And, once the first person completes their task, they are actually going to shift to make sure that, the person next to them notices that they have shifted and, the next person can go ahead. And then it becomes the responsibility of that next person to shift once they have completed the task so that, the next persons in the line get the task. So it's not necessary that, the first person in the queue, once they complete their task, they actually announce to everybody in the queue that, I have completed and now I'm moving, it's not necessary, right? So you can actually just call notify for the next waiting thread, the thread which is waiting for the longest or the thread with the highest priority to get notified. So now at every stage, let's just, make sure that we are displaying the balance just so that, our application looks complete. So now once this entire thing gets completed, whether the amount is withdrawn or not, we want to show the balance. So current balance is, and then, we would display the balance. And same thing we would do once our deposit is done. So now let's try to run this. Waiting for balance update, depositing amount, current balance is 2000, amount withdrawn successfully, current balance is 1000. This looks good to me. So this was about wait, notify all, and notify.